Hello, everybody, and welcome to Adobe Live. My name is James Bonanno, and I will be your host over the next 2 days. And today I am joined by the wonderful Jessica Hirsch, also known as Cheat Day Eats. Jessica, how are you?
Good, how are you? Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. I am just as excited to have you here and to see what we are working on today. We're getting the chat going here a little bit. Thank you for those that are tuning in. And Jessica, let's just start and tell me a little bit about what we are working on today. You have amassed a pretty amazing following, and I have definitely stalked a lot of your food content and what you have on TikTok and on Instagram. So really, really excited to let everybody know what we're working on today.
All right. Yeah. Thank you guys for joining. I am excited to chat with everyone. So feel free to leave lots of questions and messages in the chat. And I'm Jessica Hirsch. I am the content creator behind Cheat Day Eats. And I am on all social media platforms. So I have a little bit of my Instagram here. You can check it out. And then I have a YouTube. Here's my website with a lot of the recipes that I create, TikTok, and so on. And for me, you're going to notice pretty quickly that all my content is kind of revolved around food and my experiences with food, whether it be in the kitchen or around the world. And I've been doing this full time for over 4 years. I was actually a high school math teacher before this, and I had started my Instagram over 8 years ago and super passionate about creating videos. Actually for so long. And so I'm really excited to kind of talk through some of my tips and tricks that I've learned along the way and how I like to say video storytelling.
Awesome.
So this definitely check out the Instagram. Let me know what you guys think. And well, what we're going to be going over today is how I create a video recipe. So as many of you know, at the beginning of the pandemic, we all had to kind of shift. And a lot of the content that I was creating before was more restaurant focused and also travel focused. So I had to kind of reinvent and rethink about the content I was creating. And it actually pushed me to a place that I wanted to go, which was creating recipes at home. What was interesting about this process is that I was kind of wearing all the hats. So not only was I taking the video, I was filming and cooking and cleaning the dishes and trying to get all of it at once. And then I realized though that there's a lot of benefits also for this process, because when you're in the kitchen with the chef, you can't really tell him to slow down. You can a little bit, but like when you're at home creating a recipe, I could kind of create multiple takes of the same shot until I get it right, or until I get the perfect shot. So while there's some of the things that like were a little bit harder, there's things that I felt like made my editing process a lot more exciting too. And having the creative like juices that go on behind how am I going to make this recipe interesting?
I just wanted to kind of chime in here a little bit. And first, it seems like we have a lot of people in the chat. Hi, Voodoo Val, Monica. Yes, very hungry. I am hungry watching this already. And Jessica, I guess for you, like before we get into really the editing process, I'd love to know, one, how did you go from moving over to being a teacher to really getting into like the food space? Obviously, you had to shift a little bit during COVID. And I guess, is there like one specific dish that you just like can't stay away from, that it's like the perfect cheat day, so that everyone watching here can go home and make it right away?
So I've always been really passionate about food, probably since like high school. And I guess that's kind of where the name Cheat Day Eats came from. I would, eat clean all week and work out. And then I would have like this cheat day. And it was always such like an important like planning process for me. So, I always was really excited to show everyone like, oh, this is the best place to eat. So it was always about community for me. Because once I got onto Instagram, I realized there was a whole food community and I wanted to be a part of it too, and share my recommendations and also just share the stories, whether it be, culinary arts around the world too, because there's so many amazing stories with chefs and different countries that I've visited, and being able to like share that with a community from around the world, I feel like is really special. So when I was teaching, I just started my Instagram really just to be a part of that community. And my account started to grow, and I noticed that people were excited to see where I was posting. And at this point I was living in New York City, so I had a lot of restaurants to visit. And early on, I was really interested in the video storytelling aspect of it. So I was taking photos, but way before video was kind of an important part of Instagram, I started to incorporate it. And I feel like obviously that's where it's moving towards. So I think a lot of people are kind of noticing like, how can we shift ourselves?
Absolutely. I mean, I love that. And I think it raises a really good question. Voodoo Val had actually asked in the chat, what was it like changing from being a school teacher to a content creator? I know that today's world of creating content is vastly different than what it was 5 years ago, like you said. So I think that's a great question, Val. And she asked, did you juggle them both at the same time for a while? Which I think is another great question.
Yeah. So when I started my account, like I said, it was just for fun. And I started to grow, and a lot of restaurants actually looked for me to be their social media manager. So I started to accumulate like this little side hustle on this. And I realized that it was pretty challenging to do both at, a few years in. And I made the decision, and my partner that works with me also decided to leave our jobs and go into this full time. And I think that the thing that I have to say is that I absolutely love teaching. I always knew I wanted to be a math teacher. So I never could picture where I am today, because when I was going to school, I just turned 36. So, this is a while ago that I was in college, Instagram wasn't a thing.
Right.
So there was no like, oh, I want to be a content creator or photographer or influencer. So I think like it just came naturally. And for me, I think the biggest thing was that while I loved, while I loved being a high school math teacher, I absolutely loved my job. Once I started doing this, I just felt like there was this different passion that was coming from me, like the creativity, the change every day, being able to travel and see the world. I think it brought something else out of me that I didn't have before. And I think that just like following my dreams, it felt natural. And I did not feel nervous, because I knew that I was putting so much of my time and effort into something that I loved, that it would succeed.
I love that. I think, your passion definitely comes through in your work, and it comes through in the way that you explain your story. And I think it's great for people to get a little bit of insight into you as a person, you as a creator. So with that being said, I don't want to take up too much of your time on, I could talk to you about this all day, but I'm sure people would really love to see what we're working on today, and really the process behind Cheat Day Eats and this specific video. So why don't you dive right in? I will chime in with some questions on the chat and really try not to cut you off. And as a video editor myself and a video creator, I'm super excited to really see another creator and how you edit your videos.
And I do want to say that before we dive into the editing process, we'll kind of go over a little bit of what happens before I even get into the edits and get to the computer, because I think that's like super crucial to like once I actually get to this point in my process. So before we get to the video, the final version, which actually is already posted on my Instagram, and we'll look at that. Some of the things I wanted to talk about is the gear I use. For example, a lot of the footage that I'm going to be showcasing, actually all the footage is on a Sony a7S III. Awesome. So for me, you don't have to have it. And of course, I'd love to hear from everybody in the chat. Like, what are you guys filming on? If it's a phone, phones nowadays are incredible.
iPhone 13, cinematic mode.
I'm a Samsung, but okay. no hate. And so I just think that, whatever it is, utilize it and you can make it your best. And so that being said, I just wanted to talk about what I am shooting on, because it's important to know how the clips are going to look when I first put them into my program, into the Adobe Premiere Pro, right? So I'm shooting in either 4K 60 or 4K 120.
Okay.
But what I wanted to see, and you'll see also, I have it as pre-made, settings also. You'll see my TikTok adjustment layer and all these things that I have that are, set, so that when I get to the program, it's something I could just load, knowing that I don't have to redo everything every single time I open it. I film for Instagram, but on my aspect ratio, I film 9:16. So for example, we're looking at this clip right here, and it's actually at 100%, but I can actually zoom out to 50 to get it to the size so it fits perfectly. But awesome. If I go in even more, you'll see that it's actually a 9:16. And the reason I film for that is because my two main platforms are Instagram and TikTok. So this is for TikTok. And then when I will have more flexibility for Instagram, I can move around.
It's so crazy to think of the world that we're in now where you film natively for a platform, for TikTok and Instagram. And I think that's such a huge shift too in creating these types of videos. And, it's a big part of your process, clearly, that you're thinking in the pre-production mindset. You're always thinking ahead and shooting in that aspect ratio so that you save some time in the edit as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, even TikTok's like pretty new. So, I'm not always taking the content on my camera. Let's say maybe it might be a more casual video, which I think is more like the type of content that I post on TikTok, but at least I know it'll be the same aspect ratio if I film on my camera and on my phone, and I could match it up and mix match.
Very cool. Very cool.
And so that was one of the things I wanted to talk about because, if you're not filming in 4K, that's totally fine, but you won't have like the flexibility where you're seeing here when you put your content into the timeline, just so you'll know that if you're filming specifically for, let's say, Instagram.
Would you be able to go into just a little bit of detail for those that are joining and maybe are a little bit newer at shooting for this kind of content? What is the benefit of shooting 4K as opposed to shooting 1920 by 1080, which a lot of beginner, starter cameras are the standard, and what's the reason why you would shoot 4K?
So 4K is the resolution, and therefore I'm getting a higher quality, and I'm also have more flexibility in my edit, knowing that I'm exporting at 1080p. So for me, I love the flexibility of zooming in, and actually my lens is a 24-70, so I have a zoom lens. And then I also have the ability to zoom. So I feel like I have so much flexibility with just one clip because, for example, if you were at a restaurant or if I wanted to get, let's say, just gonna set my...
Getting a sneak peek of the cheese.
Yeah, so let's say if I wanted to get a wide shot, like of me putting in the mac and cheese into the oven, but then I wanted to get a close up. It could be within the same shot, but I'm able to have that flexibility because I'm 4K and then I'm in a 1080p timeline. So I think it just gives me that flexibility, and it's a higher resolution. So just in general, I feel like it has that like sharper, beautiful look.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. And I couldn't agree more with that. I think, having flexibility in any of these videos just gives you, I think, just way more convenience of if you have to go back later and you forgot a shot or you didn't have time to get the shot you wanted, you can always use that 4K clip to punch in. Interviews, I know, use 4K specifically for that so that you can have two camera angles in one. So really good point. And awesome. Okay.
So yes, it's all about the storytelling too, right? And I think that there's the idea of like this wide shot that gives you more context, whether, let's say if I was at a restaurant and I was filming and I wanted to get like the scene and the atmosphere, but then I wanted to get like a close-up of me taking a bite. Like I could actually get that all in one shot. And I think that adds to your storytelling. It gives more flexibility to how you can tell it. It gives more added value.
Very cool. And now when you're starting the process, I know you're going to dive into this, but maybe I'll just kind of cue you up on that. Do you start with a shot list? Do you start with, a treatment? Like kind of tell me some of the details of how you get going on creating a video like this.
Yeah. So, not all of my videos have the element of me in it. So you'll notice some are just like straight up food videos, but I had my partner, Brian, he is Mr. Cheat Day Eats. He came home with these huge blocks of cheese. I asked him to get cheese and then he came home with this. And I was like literally laying in bed at night and I was like, oh my God, I have like the best idea. And I would just imagine like my hands like hitting at the top as it like transitions from the blocks of cheese into shredded cheese. And that's kind of like video came together for me. So it could come together, whether it be like a specific recipe I want to create at home, or maybe it's an idea that I have in my mind that I wanted to like execute. So for this specific video, you're going to notice it's pretty long actually for me. Most of my videos will be like about 10 minutes. This is 21 because it incorporates multiple shots of me like trying the dish. And also, some of the things that happen when you're filming is getting multiple shots of the same thing. Now, what was interesting, you'll notice here is that there are probably 5 clips. Let me just do what I would do first. So I'm going to mix it up a little bit as I talk. So one of the first things that I do is I'll set my first clip to 50, and then I'll just copy that and then I'll paste all my motion onto the other clips so that I have the same scale and position. So that way they're all 50 now. So that way when I go,
that's a huge hack and a time saver.
Yeah. So I use the A tool, everything after it, I go paste, but you have to make sure that when you do it, you have just the motion. I mean, obviously this is like my first step, so not much else is going to happen there. So everything is now at 50%. But you know, when it comes to like creating a recipe at home, I had the flexibility to do multiple takes while I was hitting the cheese. While I had the idea and my partner was filming me and I wanted him to kind of come up with the camera angle as I hit the cheese, and then I wanted the cheese to kind of start falling down, and so he would kind of pull back as the cheese fell down. This is all important to the editing process, obviously, because I wanted to make sure that like once I got to this process here, that it was going to align perfectly.
Right.
We did a few on the tripod, we did a few handheld just to see what worked best, because sometimes you don't know. You know,
yeah. Well, you get these like happy accidents too sometimes, where you have a plan of how you're doing it, and then maybe like a handheld shot, the camera movement just creates some sort of movement in a transition that you didn't expect, and it often leads to a really, really cool.
You know, take multiple tries while you can. Now, the thing that was not as easy is once we actually shredded the cheese, there wasn't so many takes because I didn't want to keep cleaning up. Okay. So like this time we took, and let me tell you, these blocks got really heavy too.
I'm sure.
I was like actually surprised because I was like hitting them. I'm like, okay, well, like enough, like we have to move on. So one of those has to be good. So you'll see I have a bunch of clips in the beginning that are just of that shot list. So here's my shot list. I'll pull it up for a second. Once again, I knew that intro shot. And when you're creating content, especially for like something like Instagram or any platform really, I think one of the things you want to think about is that intro shot. It has to be super eye-catching, important. A lot of times, like let's say if I don't have something like 2 big blocks of cheese to like get the audience super engaged, I'll want a shot that is similar to my end, because I want to create this almost like a loop.
Right.
So it might be like the end shot of the mac and cheese, and then at the end, there's another shot of that, kind of like leading into the beginning, and you know what you're going to get. So right. I think one tells you, well, what's the end product? It's a mac and cheese. 2, it's something like a super sexy shot of like mac and cheese, like getting lifted up. And then it just draws people in right away.
Yeah, I would definitely, say ditto to that, because I think when looking through your work, that's one of the things I noticed a lot, is that you create these really beautiful loops that are so seamless that it keeps people's attention a lot longer too. And you can be watching the same video and over again before you realize, oh, I'm watching one video, and there's a really seamless transition. And so the fact that you think about that in the beginning stages of the process is huge as well. And it definitely shows in the final products.
Thank you. And so once I had that like block cheesing idea, that's kind of where I was like, okay, well, I know what I'm going to make. And this is actually one of my classic recipes. So it's not anything super complex, right? So when it comes to a lot of the videos that I create, sometimes these dishes can be simple. And it's like, well, while it's simple, that doesn't mean it's not exciting and it's not something people don't want to see, right? I think actually people really relate to something like a mac and cheese. Like, who doesn't love mac and cheese?
Right.
So
crowd pleaser.
It is. And actually I brought this to, a party because it's like a tower. It looks like a cake. And I think, people love the idea of something like a mac and cheese and then taking it and building a whole cake out of it, or tower, whatever you want to call it. So I had to think about what is it going to like get people interested once they see that cheese kind of fall into the bowl. And for me and a lot of my content, I plan ahead as far as what I'm going to film in. And because of the specific video and everything kind of was like pouring into the big bowl, a lot of the shots were 4K 120, because I wanted to be able to really slow down the footage and emphasize that specific moment. So, I mean, there was a chunk of them that were filmed in 4K 120. Once again, you kind of asked about 4K. Why do I choose 120? Well, I have the option of 4K 60, which I create proxies for. So sometimes that's easier to work with. But the 120 for me is like really exciting. That's like the things you really want to emphasize. Yep. And I don't know. I just think it just has like a different, like cinematic, beautiful look to it. It's something that you don't see with the human eye. So I think like for us to watch a video of like the steam coming off the mac and cheese is something as simple as like that, I think is, to me, I like really feel like it pulls in and draws the
Totally.
moment a little bit longer and gets people excited.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I was a sucker for shooting 120, just like everything, and I got really, I think I got like attached to only shooting 120. And when you can, everything looks beautiful and cinematic. And another to chime in as another reason why you shoot 120 is, you know, you have a lot of more flexibility in a longer clip, right? To, let's say you have a certain amount of time and you can only get 5 or 6 clips. Shooting in 120, you now have the flexibility to use that over a minute, really, if you shot the right cinematic clips. So I think 4K 120, there are extreme benefits to it. And for food photography and video for you, obviously that's a huge plus.
Yeah, and I think it's almost become like a little bit of a signature look for me. Like a lot of people know, like, okay, slow motion, like it's definitely gonna be incorporated. It's very rare that I won't include it in one of my videos,
Yes.
At least at one point or another. And so we kind of walked through a bunch of the shots, all the foods going in. And this is a really, like I said, it's I want to say a dump and bake is like a term I like to use, whether it be like a cake or a mac and cheese, where you just kind of dump everything into one bowl and bake it. It's
Cool.
super easy. So it had a mix of, close-up shots of me with the eggs. Like, for example, I did a double shot with the eggs. And that was like something I knew in my head I wanted to get. So like we got a wide shot of that, but then I also wanted to get the element of like, oh wow, there's a wide shot of her dropping the eggs into the mac and cheese, but then also it hitting the mac and cheese, the like egg yolk. So these are all things that I kind of go through.
Awesome. Yeah, people are loving your 120 frames per second and are loving the mac and cheese. So it seems like you got a double whammy here. So let's keep it going.
All right, cool. So now we'll get into that process. I know it's been kind of like talking through it. So one of the first things I do is, okay, so I think like I've watched so many different videos and I feel like I do this a little bit differently than, most people, but everyone has their process. And we're not talking about a, cooking show here. So it's a pretty sequential timeline for me. And therefore I don't feel like I really have all these like different B-roll and different elements that I need to kind of divide the content. So I usually just take all the videos and put them onto the timeline as is. I don't use the source window to kind of chop it up. And I know that's different from a lot of people, but for me, like this is really the most of the video. Cool. So there's nothing that I shot that's not on the timeline right now. One of the things I want to mention is like I already edited this video. So I'm kind of working backwards. So I'm just showcasing like how the edit came about. So this is all the footage. And like I said, it's kind of daunting because it's like 21 minutes, which probably for you isn't that bad if you're used to doing YouTube videos. Yeah. Now, just to give you a note, most of my videos are like 30 seconds or less. So to go from 21 minutes to 30 seconds, and then TikTok's even less. Yeah. So how do I cut down all that footage? And it takes time.
It sounds exhausting to say, but I know you're going to be able to successfully do it. And I know it's a challenge because I've been there, but you do it so wonderfully that I think a lot of people are excited to see how you're going to decide what clips to take, what to, cut out. I did actually have a question about your use of audio too. And I don't know if you're going to touch on this at all or not, but do you, for these kind of videos, do you tend to record all your audio? I see you have the audio track there, or do you use any audio other than music in post?
It depends on the video. For the most part, I actually don't use the audio. So I actually usually go ahead and just delete it, which I'll do right now. Cool. In this situation, there was just too many other elements. And I could add, for example, like the egg hitting the mac and cheese. If I wanted to add a sound effect, I'll probably just find that on Epidemic Sound of just like something replicating that versus trying to get it from my audio. Because there's just so much going on in this video that I didn't want to incorporate having like the mic on. In other circumstances, let's say if I was doing a food review, I would incorporate it. And I usually do that externally and then upload it and just match the sound.
Cool.
Music is such a big part of my process. And I'll talk about that a little bit more towards the end. Sometimes Sometimes it's more of like the first thing I do. Like I have like the song that I found that I'm like, oh, this is perfect for this video. Or sometimes I'll chop it up a little bit, find the song that I feel like is fitting the vibe of whatever that, video's recipe is that day, and then kind of fine tune it. There's definitely certain things that I knew in this video I wanted to make sure I hit as far as beats. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more later.
Cool.
So the first thing that I really do is just scrub through the footage and try to watch it all at once. And you're going to notice, like, as I'm going through this, I'll start to make faces because I was like, this is getting heavy. So like I said, it was probably about 40 minutes to figure out like what was the perfect match between the first clip and the second clip. And the reason being, like I said, we took a bunch of content, like trying to find like the perfect kind of motion to have the blocks hit. And I don't want to focus on this too long because I've talked about it a lot. Once again, you could tell this one was on a tripod.
Right.
Once again, I had the flexibility once I knew which ones I was going to look at as far as the cheese falling, which was only 2. So here we go. I'm just gonna.
Question for you. Do you, because this is the style at which you start your edit, like you create this big assembly cut, rather than using the source window, do you, during the production process, have a way of like making any little notes of, okay, take number 3 was the one, like that was the shot? Or do you do sort of all that here as you're scrubbing through the timeline? I know that's like a preference of some folks as well.
I just kind of do it while I'm editing, to be honest. Yeah. And so, as I mentioned, once the cheese was shredded, I knew I had just like 2 takes. And so therefore I kind of had to work backwards and start with here is where I wanted to kind of start my video. So, I think one of the things I also wanted to mention, if for anyone out there watching, and I'm going to say, once I started learning Adobe Premiere Pro, I was very resistant to the shortcuts. The keyboard shortcuts now are like God to me, because I'm like, I swear, like it's so important in my workflow. And I think it's important to learn. So I, feel like that has really sped up my workflow. So while at first you might be resistant to it, it definitely is something that I feel like is key.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No pun intended. I like that. I have one more question for you as you can continue to edit, and I will try not to distract you, but I'm trying to sort of chime in here with some thoughts I have. But for those watching this right now, if you guys are just tuning in, welcome to the chat. For those that have watched this before, this will be available on as a replay on YouTube. But if you guys want to head over to behance.net/live, please go check it out. We're having a great time watching Jessica, also known as Cheat Day Eats, make some beautiful, delicious mac and cheese. But my question was, do you light all of these scenes? Because it does look really beautifully produced. And I think that's another thing that people are probably wondering, how much production other than just the camera itself is going into what you're shooting.
So luckily, we recently basically chose the apartment we live in right now because of how much light comes into it.
Awesome.
So I love natural light. It's just something that I've always gravitated towards as a photographer and videographer. So I personally just have been using that. But obviously there's a lot less of, a consistency with it. So sometimes in the editing process, let's say if the sun came out all of a sudden, it might warm up the shot a little bit. So I think it's like, while it's my preference, I know that there's some challenges that you have to accept with it too.
Gotcha. Awesome.
Now, one of the things I wanted to mention is that I specifically know I shot this in 4K 120. Therefore, I do Control R, and I'm going to change the speed to 25%. My timeline is 30 frames per second. So I'm going to change that here, and I'm going to start to play it. You're going to know, I try to cut it beforehand so that I'm not dealing with too much excess, even though I love that little mini noodle that just fell. And I'll kind of like cue it up here and literally cue it up. So I'll use cue to cut everything before. And then obviously, like, this is a beautiful shot, right? So I'm getting the hands and the bowl, but for me, like, I really wanted to scale this in and emphasize the mac and cheese just going into the bowl. Like, I mean, you could see, like, I have a lot of details in my nails, which I showcase a lot, but in this situation, it was just all about the pasta going into the bowl.
All about that mac.
Yes. And so now you're going to notice that this is where I'll use keyframes for my position and my scale, because I want to follow the pasta as it slowly falls into the bowl. So I'm going to stop it where I kind of want it to end. And then I'm just going to scroll up and adjust. And this is where I'll, start to fine tune and angle it, make sure it's straight. And so once again, let's do playback.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And so, I'll kind of, once again, I'll do this like as a brief cut, and then like we'll move on. Just make sure I'll Control K, see what else I got, make sure there's nothing else after that I missed. And then I'll double L just to kind of scrub through a little bit quickly. And I could see that nothing else happened. I mean, as much as I tried when I'm filming to make sure I don't film too much extra, especially with the 4K 120, it just happens. And so, so now I'm going to be pouring the milk, and I decided to kind of do a little bit of a double and pour the milk and the cheese. And once again, 4K 120. So I could use speed ramps here too, in which case I'll extend this up a little bit. And so if I wanted to, which I won't necessarily in this, but I love that there's the steam, there was the cheese, there was like a lot of elements of things kind of falling. So you could play around with the motion and kind of zoom in a little bit, because that's what I'm starting to do actually with the camera itself.
Yeah.
And in this case, I decided to chop this up into two different clips where I wanted to get that shot of the milk actually hitting the pasta too. So and for me, like when it comes to food styling, I tend to let the food shine. There's not that many elements of, plates and napkins. Like to me, it's like all about the food. So you're going to notice a lot of my shots are like really close up because I love to see that detail.
Yeah, that's a great point too. And definitely another thing that I noticed with your work, there's a lot of other food bloggers and filmmakers out there that I think have different styles, but for you, it really is all about the food, and that's the first thing you see when even just the shot, and it's captivating and it makes you want to watch more for sure.
Thank you. Yeah. So like there's that milk shot going in. I'm just going to cut that there and keep playing it. And just because I shot it on 4K 120 doesn't mean I'm going to slow everything down. Right. So I like to play with speed ramps, and it just has to be appropriate for whatever that video is. And I think like actually using a speed ramp and having a little bit of speed up and then to the slow down almost emphasizes the slow motion even more. Where if it's just a slow motion shot, like it could get a little boring and repetitive. So moving on to the next shot, I actually don't think I use this. I'm just going to rotate it.
I like the top down though. What's nice about shots like that is that it, like I think one thing that you do a really great job of, and something I want to hit on is the shot list being so important, and the variety of framing too, and the variety of different shot choices, because that keeps your attention, and that itself is, without doing any of these speed ramps or slow motion effects, that keeps your attention just as much as these effects that are added on to after.
Yeah, I think angling and thinking about just position as far as like, is it the person watching, do they feel like they're the one cooking? Kind of like bringing that angle and that feeling in is really interesting. And for me, it's being part of the video almost adds a little bit of a challenge, because I like to be in control as far as like the camera movement. And I personally love being handheld. A lot of my recipe videos, I end up having to be on a tripod because it's just me. But if my partner was the one filming here, so, I'm trying to, as far as like the creative aspect goes into it, like say like, okay, this shot's going to be where you're going to have to like kind of come overhead or pull back as the milk's pouring, and just be very specific about that. And luckily he's, amazing and knows exactly like as far as what my look is too. So
I have a question about the logistics of the cooking process while you're filming all of these things. So to get the steam and to make sure that you're making all these things timely, I feel like that's something that maybe you can hit on a little bit, why it's so much more difficult to shoot these, as you're making them. And mac and cheese seems like maybe one of the simpler dishes, but it still probably requires a lot of pre-planning on your end to decide when am I going to shoot this shot so that the steam isn't going to cool down by the time I get to this other shot.
Yeah, I think that for the most part, it's something as long as you plan ahead, you capture it. Certain things we have to like do a little bit of a fake out. Like if I'm doing, let's say pizza or something that's cheesy and I wait too long and the cheese kind of hardens, I pop it into the microwave and do a little magic. And there's definitely a lot of like little magic tricks that you can do to kind of make sure your food's staying fresh, Cool. And I think just, yeah, I've learned that along the way, which is also one of the benefits of being at home and cooking a recipe video versus being in the kitchen or being at your table. If like you wait too long and the food falls flat,
Right.
like, well, what are you going to do? You don't want to send your food back.
Absolutely.
So this is a shot that, like I said, I didn't use, even though it was so pretty. I loved all the noodles like shaking around. It was so cute. But here's a scale of 100%. Once again, I said 25. I wanted to show you, like, you can always check your properties, make sure, like, if I thought I shot something in 4K and 120 and it was 4K 60, just to make sure I don't slow it down, which you'll notice right away. It'll kind of give a little bit of a lag. At the end of the day, I had a lot of footage and I sadly had to not incorporate it all. And so that's why a shot list is super important. I hate having to edit like more than I need,
Yeah.
I try to really be very specific with the shots. And then therefore, when I get to the editing process, it's actually a lot quicker.
Yeah. And I mean, that comes with years of experience too. I feel like when you're first shooting, it can be very easy to overshoot, which isn't a bad thing, but it does save you a lot of time. And eventually, time is money. So it saves you money in the process when you're not spending more time than you have to actually sit and go through all of the footage that you won't be using. And then you have tons of unused footage on your hard drive. So you definitely thought that through.
And it doesn't always happen, like you said, and maybe I will just like want to get like a few extra shots. But I think in general, like having that idea is definitely helpful.
Awesome.
So let's see here. So I'm just scrubbing through. Like I said, this is a process, and when it comes
falling,
when it comes to this, let's see. I knew I wanted to get the shots, and while I was filming in 4K 120 for both of these, I knew that I had to get that separate shot for the egg falling in. Because the one of me was just going to be too wide in a different angle.
Right.
So, and there happened to be 3 eggs. So that was perfect. For this also, like, for example, what if I wanted, right now I'm kind of off the screen, just bring it up a little bit. And I actually ended up making this like 2 different shots because I slowed it down. And then
I'm pretty impressed with your accuracy in getting that egg just like perfectly into the bowl while keeping your eyes on the camera. Like that's impressive.
Yeah, it takes practice. I feel like I've cracked eggs now, like so many times, like into bowls, like looking at the camera. But so once again, for my food videos, you're seeing the process and I'm not talking through it, even though sometimes I'll do a voiceover for, let's say, TikTok. But I like to kind of make it like pretty simple, straightforward, like people like see what's happening.
I have a great question here in the chat. The chat is very engaged today and they're loving what you're doing. Marco actually has a question a little bit separate from editing, which I'd like to bring up as you're continuing to scrub through this.
Yeah.
He wonders, are there restaurants that pay you for this kind of thing? How do you actually form a business model out of this, which you've clearly done so well? And I know you hit on this in the beginning, but I don't know if he was here beforehand.
Yeah, so I think for as a content creator, it's important to wear many hats and be versatile with the ways you can monetize. And, we do work with sponsored posts with like big brands, but we offer our services as photographers and videographers to restaurants. So we do a lot of packages and create content assets for either their website, social media, and, it's one of my favorite things actually, because I feel like I love going into restaurants all the time and, being able to kind of shoot the menu, and not only that, but then we get to try it. So
absolutely, that's the best part.
Yeah, I agree. But it's fun because I like, there's a few restaurants that we've continued to work with over the years. And, a lot of the restaurants are just like have great fun menus. And I love getting into the kitchen also. Like, I think like that's something you don't see, right? And that's something that you'll see on my page is that, do I still have it loaded? A lot of the, let's see if I'm gonna try to find something from a restaurant that we got in the kitchen. Here we go. So this is the process of, behind the scenes, like no one sees this. And so those are the types of videos that I like to create for restaurants, where I get to get in the kitchen and really get the audience to see what's happening. Like, how is that made? And I think that that's something like really exciting. So we did this bagel one too.
And now when you're doing that, are you is that a lot of spec work that you're just going into restaurants? Like, let's say you had just started your business, for people that are watching that, want to get involved in something like you're doing. Is that just approaching these restaurants and saying, oh my God, I love what you're doing. Can I, film some of this? Can I shoot some of this and create something for your restaurant? Or is this all, paid advertising that you're doing with these restaurants?
It's a mix, usually the ones where I'm just like sitting at the table, that's just like us going in and trying, the restaurant. Some are paid, we'll go in and create assets for them too. Cool. So like, for example, this one has a lot of slow motion, like speed ramps going into like them rolling it. And like, I just felt like I had like a really interesting viewpoint from like behind the scenes of them rolling these gorgeous like rainbow bagels.
So cool.
And so let's see, I think those are probably the most representative of those. But okay, so back to the editing. So once again, I'm mixing the pasta, not too exciting. So in this case, this was something that you'll notice is a pretty long clip. And I was like, okay, I'm bored. Like, it's the same very repetitive type of mix. You want to make sure it's mixed up. So I might just like, again, like cut it like right off the bat, like just get a few, as long as I got like a few seconds of it starting to mix, and then I'll kind of scrub through, make sure I get to the end. And then just like get an end shot of it, knowing that I captured like the beginning, you're mixing it. Okay, now it's all mixed. Like, let's move on. Like, I don't think people need to see it being mixed too much. So
where is that restaurant? Those rainbow bagels look amazing. Is that in New York?
Yeah, both of those are from one's from Boz Bagels and the other one is the Dough Club.
Okay. Seems like people were into that, into your bagels.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I think actually this is probably one of the only videos that I like mostly sped up the entire video, but which is very rare for me. This. All right. So I'm trying to find one of the videos, one of the clips where like I'll use like a speed ramp. So actually we could go into, since we've kind of showcased how I'll kind of scrub through, cut, I have actually queued up like the different points in my editing process.
Cool.
So let's see here. So once again, I decided to go with these clips. Just want to make sure I got it for you.
Marco has a question, another little follow-up to what you were talking about before. Do a lot of these restaurants and brands leave the creative decision up to you, or is that a more collaborative effort between the brand you're working with? I think that's a really cool insight into what you do.
For the most part, I would say that the creative aspect is something that we handle on our end. That being said, like if someone's hiring me for a specific photo shoot that they already have something in mind, then they'll communicate that and we'll come up with like a set plan.
Cool.
But a lot of times I feel like people are hiring me for like that specific look and like what I'm already creating. But we did like a photo shoot in Atlanta where we were like showcasing more of like the atmosphere and the scene. So like that was kind of fun to create and like step outside what I normally do.
Right.
All right. So let's say if I wanted to do speed ramp here and kind of, I would do the time remapping speed and then I can just select a point here, or if you wanted to do it here, you could do it there too. And then like I wanted to kind of speed up. Like once again, I said, I'm just going to zoom in here with the plus sign and you could kind of just make it soft into the speed. So it's not as harsh. So it's just like something simple, just to, like I said before, kind of make sure that your clip's not like lagging on too much as far as like too much slow motion, which like I said, I love to incorporate, but you don't want to do a little bit of overkill. And you could kind of move this along and have it be a gradual speed up, but I'm going to bring it in a little bit earlier.
It's a good point too, that, all of these techniques that you're using, speed ramping, slowing the clips down in 120, these are all, adding to the final, your style, like your look, and they can very easily be used irresponsibly, as I'll say, as a video editor, if they're not done tastefully. And I think you've done enough of this to really know exactly when and where to use these functions.
Yeah. And I think, for example, this clip's pretty straightforward. Let's say if I was just incorporating like the cheese falling as simultaneously with the milk, just going to cut that for a second. And there's not much going on, but what I would find that might be helpful and kind of just keep the eye moving is to add keyframes and just make sure you bring them to the beginning. And I like to just ease out, and then I'll just kind of come in a little bit to the scale, maybe just like the smallest amount, make sure I bring that to the end. And it just kind of allows the motion to like be a little bit more fluid. Well, that was off, but you get the idea there.
Yeah.
So as it's coming in closer. So I'll do that to a few clips just to kind of like, even if the camera's not moving, but there's motion going on, and then just adding a little bit motion as far as the clips like happening. I feel like it kind of just brings the attention in a little bit more too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it brings the viewer in, especially on something like this. And I mean, just position and scale keyframes are very, I feel like overlooked and maybe often underutilized. And I like that you're hitting on these things as well, because it's easy to look at effects and transitions as the way to make your videos pop, but you can very easily do that with just position and scale properties if done right.
And yeah, I think that one of the, I think back to kind of my beginning of my story, as a teacher, for me, I've been self-taught. So there's so many amazing resources, and I'm glad to be one of those today that you learn so much about the video editing process. And, it's constant. I'm always looking at new videos, and there's always, new updates, whether that be on the app, so I feel like you're just constantly feeling like, okay, well, what's next? Right. And as a content creator, I think that that's normal too, because with the social media platforms always changing, you want to change and be on top of what's cool to be showcasing. And as far as video goes, there's so much to learn. And so even just little tips and tricks that make your videos a little bit more smooth into the transitions. I feel like those are the things that have helped my videos, really go from, A to B.
Awesome. Yeah, completely agree. And I mean, there is so much out there, and I feel like the progression of Instagram and of TikTok and the amount of video creators that are doing this is really pushing other creators to, jump on board and to try to create as well. And I think the fact that you're self-taught and you've just been creating a number of videos has definitely shown, and super exciting work you have here, and everyone seems to be extremely engaged in the chat today. So I'm having a good time.
Do we have any questions?
We do have another question. It seems like people are very interested in, the client business side of things. So if you're okay with answering one more of those.
Sure.
Seems like we have a question about whether the client, when they want something long form or short form, are they asking you specifically for a video for YouTube or for their website or for, social media? So maybe go into that process a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. Every client is different. And so the deliverables are always going to be changing based off of what they're looking for. A lot of times, for example, if we're doing something which you might be familiar with yourself, is for working for a destination, a lot of longer format videos, which incorporate more of what we did throughout an entire trip, might be something that the client would be looking for versus something like a restaurant, which might be a few short videos. So, on our YouTube, we have a video from all the different destinations that we've been to, whether we just created it for ourselves or for a client specifically. And I think that you'll find something like that relates to who that client is and what they're looking for specifically.
And do you have a preference? Do you feel like you have more fun creating short form content like this, or do you like the longer form, recap videos?
That's a good question. I guess I'm so used to creating content for Instagram. I would say that I probably prefer it. That being said, I think when we go on a trip and it's been a while, I just feel like there's something exciting about taking something like a big project and finally getting to the end and seeing how your entire trip comes to life and reliving it. I feel like it brings back all those memories. We went to Rome and ate all the pastas. And so I feel like for me, seeing that video, it just brings me back all the different people we met, or the restaurants we went to, and how amazing the pasta was at that specific restaurant. So I don't know, a little bit of both.
It's a good answer. I completely, I agree with that. I'm finishing a video from our recent trip in Iceland, and that's a very long form, like 15 minutes, which is completely separate from this. But I've been working on that, and in watching the process you have, like there's two different parts of the creative brain that go into what you're doing, I think, and then like a longer form. So it's really interesting to hear the difference.
Yeah, it's interesting also is like, for example, what you're looking at right now is a pretty simple timeline, right? When you get into something like a trip, there's just so many more elements. There's the B-roll of like, maybe you're getting like the whole scene versus like a specific moment. Where here you're going to notice my workflow is pretty simple and straightforward as far as, like I said, the recipe content goes. Once I start, adding adjustment layers and getting into coloring, and then adding the layers of like maybe the sound effects of the different, food hitting, like even like something like cracking the eggs on the bowl, right? Like that little sound effect. So then it starts to get a little bit more complex, but for right now, like it's pretty straightforward, right? Like you're used to having all these different layers.
Yep. It looks like a colorful rainbow mess that if you're not a video editor, you look at that and have like a heart attack, but it is very simple once you start getting into the process.
Yeah. And I mean, I watch a lot of the like other people's editing process and I'm like, whoa, that looks pretty complex. There's lots of layers, which
yeah. Well, I think what's so cool about Premiere and just video editing in general is watching you just go through this simple process. Like I've already learned different techniques that I didn't really like, that I don't use in that way. And I'm like, oh my God, I should do that more often. Like when you actually copied and pasted all of your scale attributes, I was like, I never do it that way. Why don't I just do it that way instead of like, so I think that's you can really learn from everybody's editing workflow. And it's
always
really fun.
Yeah. I love seeing it. I love seeing other people's like workflow and seeing how they kind of think about like, even what's interesting, I will mention, you were talking about going to restaurants. Like if I filmed with a friend and they filmed the same exact video, like same exact process, right? Our two videos could look so different. Yeah. And, she might be filming on the iPhone. I'm filming on a camera. So maybe I might have like a little bit more bokeh and like a specific look, but even the whole edit is just like completely different, which I think is cool. It's like everyone has like a different eye and way that they see the process. And it kind of makes it kind of fun to see how, you could take one thing and create so much with it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's such I mean, that's the part of storytelling that's so great about what we do and what you do. And, you are in essence a teacher again, like creating stories this way, and you create a story in a very unique way. That's your brand and your style. And I think, circling it back to that question that we've gotten in the chat about you getting hired for this, that's what companies are hiring you for, is that storytelling, element and that creativity that you have, that you put into all your work.
And, obviously I think, like I said earlier too, did anyone mention what they're filming on?
I actually wanted to open that up to the chat, and I would love to see, we didn't get any comments, but for those that are just joining and tuning in, we started the stream. Jessica shoots on a Sony, you said an A7S III, right?
Yep.
Okay, A7S III, for those that are new to the world of Sony, it's a mirrorless camera. It's a beautiful camera. I myself am a Canon shooter, but I'm probably going to move over to the dark side at some point. I just can't stay away. I look at your footage and it's just, I'm drooling. So I'm still like not fully there, but I would love to hear from anyone in the chat. What do you guys shoot on? Is it a phone? Is it a mirrorless camera, cinema camera? There's so many tools and resources out there that really help us do what we do.
Yeah, I love it. When I first started, when I was a teacher, like I said, I was just shooting on my phone, and back then they were horrible.
I know.
Now it's like, I mean, actually my phone had 4K 60 before my camera did at one point, Yeah. So it's interesting. But
I think
you have.
Yeah, you raise a good, you were about to say that, you raise a good point. Like the best camera you can have is the one that's on you at all times. So if it's your mirrorless camera and it's in your backpack and you have it with you all the time, then that's the camera that you're going to be telling stories with. If it's your phone, my wife Anna has been on the stream a number of times, and as a photographer, she still goes to her phone, and I'm the one that goes to the camera. So we have different methods as well.
Yeah, and I think actually I prefer different methods based off of the platform that I'm posting to. For example, like I see, have it up here. I think I have 2 TikToks, by the way. So one is called It's My Cheat Day. The other one's Cheat Day Eats, which is more recipe content.
Cool.
It's My Cheat Day is actually about my like restaurant experiences. So for example, with this, I actually try to push to use my phone more just because I feel like it just fits that platform. People like more like raw in the moment. That's what I feel. And that's not for everybody, right? Like maybe someone is super successful showcasing how they have like this professional look. I already do that on my Instagram. So like, I'd rather show like this more just like in the moment feeling. And it's just like, a bunch of clips put together from my phone, and it's super like, short form video, not polished at all. And it's kind of nice because like with my Instagram videos, it could be like 2 to 4 hours to edit something, where this, might be a few minutes. And it's just interesting because it's just such a different platform, and it's cool to see like what works for certain platforms.
Yeah, though, I mean, the world of TikTok has opened up so many doors for people. I know, our TikTok is the same way, and we've only really posted phone videos on there, which seem to do better than some of the polished videos, like you said, but then it's nice and convenient. And so you have to adapt as a creator to what platforms exist now, which is kind of a nice, it's overwhelming a little bit, but it is also nice knowing that there are different platforms for different kinds of creators, whether you're just creating on the phone for the first time, or you're, creating more polished videos like you have on your Instagram.
Yeah. And I think as a content creator, a lot of people are a little hesitant to want to have to join another app. And I feel like you shouldn't let that intimidate you, because if any app is more casual, is I would say TikTok. So like if you are putting so much time into Instagram, even taking out a little bit of that time and putting it towards another app, if you're a content creator, could be helpful. Just to, spread out and showcase your content differently too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's something that actually I found really interesting, like this specific video. I don't know if it'll play.
Oh, wow.
So this was a video that I did take on my camera, not my phone. And it performed really well, but it was also a longer format, and interesting that it didn't perform as well on Instagram, but on here it like killed it. So you never know too. That's the kind of thing I think that a lot of people say also with like TikTok. It's like you never know what's going to do well. So just like try it out and
it is it's a total crapshoot. It can sometimes make you want to pull your hair out, but overall it's for fun and just to try to see about growing your style and your brand on TikTok as well.
For sure. Yeah.
We got a couple more questions, and then I want to get you rolling here. I feel like I keep distracting you.
Oh no,
here,
I mean, like I said, like a lot of the thing is a little bit boring. So you could go with the questions.
Cool. Let's see, questions, or no, we have people in here that are putting their cameras. I'd love to hear a few more. We have a Canon shooter, yay Canon, and then video with the GH5. That's the Panasonic GH5. That's still a great option. The frame rates on the GH5 are amazing.
Yes, they are.
So I think that's why a lot of people would use it. We have another Canon M50. That's a great camera, a little vlogging camera, good mirrorless. I've actually thought of having that as sort of a complement to some of my larger Canons. And a Pixel 5. I'm an Apple guy, so is the Pixel 5 a Samsung or
no? That's
Google phone?
That's a Google.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. So a wide range of people shooting on a lot of different cameras. Great to see. And there was another question here in the chat. Is Instagram TV limited in length, either Instagram TV or Reels? And I believe it's 30 seconds, right? Is that right, Jessica? Or...
For Reels, yes, 30 seconds right now. There's IGTV, which has to be over a minute.
Gotcha.
So yeah, there's different lengths for different, and then like regular post would be under a minute.
Right.
I know that like a lot of people say that with Reels, there's more of it visibility because, it apparently pushes it out to not just your followers. So I think that, if that's something that you're interested in, I mean, everyone has a different way that they can kind of showcase their content. But for me, like, obviously I showed you, I was posting on TikTok and that's a 9:16. Well, maybe I can throw it into a reel and see how it performs.
Yeah. So so let's take this video, for example. If you were planning on posting this video as Instagram Reel, which you have, would you then post that to TikTok and cut it down to like a shorter format, or how would you do that? Just to make sure that you're, creating the same video.
For example, this is my latest edit. So I'm just going to show you. I would actually go ahead and just gonna a little bit so I can see my whole timeline. So as you see, this is like my final, right? So there's still not much to it, but I would take, actually, I don't even want the sound on that. So I'm just gonna lock that in. I would copy that, and then I would open up a new sequence, and you're gonna notice here that I actually have 3 custom sequences already set for me, presets. And one's for Instagram, and you can see all the video settings here. One's for TikTok, and one is for a client that I usually do that for a client who has Square on their website. So I would just go here, and I would paste it, and then I would just go in and let's see what's happening here. Just zoom in a little bit. So I actually, for my Instagram, sometimes we'll put a photo in the front. So that's where that gap was. Now I'll just adjust it. In this situation, let's say if I tried the cake, I might add that clip to the beginning. And then for my TikToks, I'll usually do a voiceover where I'll talk through the recipe, or I'll talk about like whatever it is in that specific video. Gotcha. So you'll notice that my adjustment layer is the adjustment layer that it was for Instagram, which is 1080 by 1350. And right now that's not big enough. So I would just actually extend that. And then this is for this video, it was a little more complex, but I would just copy that once again, using that same like little hack, paste it, make sure I'm on motion and not copy the settings, press OK. And then all of my adjustment layers would be on the whole thing. Now, awesome. Because I had a lot of movement in the specific video, like you could tell right now that this like black part up here would be cut, and I don't want that. I want the clip to showcase on the entire frame. So I would have to adjust that. So I'd have to make some adjustments in this specific case, in which case it would be a little tight. So I try to shoot knowing that if I'm shooting a 9:16, like to kind of like center myself a little bit, especially for this first shot where I'll obviously have to adjust it a little bit. Sometimes I just throw it in, change the adjustment layer, and that's it. And
yeah, I mean, sometimes it's that easy, huh? And you can just like just shift a few things.
Yeah, but I'll just like play it through really quick and see. There's if I nested it and warped it, you would have to just go back and get that clip and kind of re-edit it a little bit.
Now I have 2 questions, taking it a step back here. So you mentioned thumbnail, or you mentioned you usually put a photo in the beginning of the clip, which is a great way to, entice the audience right away. So can you hit on the importance of a thumbnail and like how you would go about thinking of the thumbnail for this specific video?
Yeah. So, well, there's 2 parts to this, and one is I think almost like a glitch, but it's something I mentioned earlier. So I'll start with like that, is that I like to have the end product in the beginning shot. So I usually try to have like almost like a mini video that gets people excited in the beginning. That I said, like creates that loop. So for those of you who just tuning in, like I was talking about, one of my little hacks or like little tricks when it comes to my videos is having like this little loop version. And so for me, I like to end and start with a similar video. Now, that being said, I knew I wanted to actually start this video with the cheese. So I threw a photo in the beginning. And in this situation, the reason why is because I didn't want the video to start here. I wanted it to have like the end product.
Gotcha.
So people knew what they were going to get. That being said, for some reason, my Instagram doesn't let me choose a cover photo. So I always have to either choose like the end shot, which actually works out for me in the beginning, or I'll like throw a photo in there. So that's what comes up. And also one of the things that's beneficial for that, on that note, like you mentioned, it's a cover photo, right? So you want it to be as polished and perfect as possible. So I might not get that in like that video shot. So throwing in something like this shot, which I like took on my camera, I edited it exactly how I wanted it. So I know that's going to show up on my profile and it's going to kind of match everything else. Then I think that that's important to kind of like have that overall theme.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's a big point. And you hit on the reason we do that too. I think it's important to have that consistent feel, you know, and like sometimes you can't get that on a still frame of video, although with 4K, you could certainly pull a still and it would look
Yeah.
just as good. But I think that's a really good point. And I think in Reels now too, you can change the cover photo in
Yes.
Reels, right?
I
So you
love that.
can't,
I wish you could do that on a regular post. And
yeah,
yeah, I think that that is something that Instagram did that's like amazing, because I feel like I'm able to put up a polished photo and it doesn't have to be in the beginning of the video. It just makes it life so much easier.
yeah, agreed.
And like you said, it could be something like a screenshot from it, or it could be something you took before. And
Right.
now we actually tried to be pretty purposeful with like, okay, well, while we're shooting this, like what will be the cover photo? So definitely think about that. That's definitely, it wasn't on my shot list, but it's something we think about no matter what. Like, well, what is the cover photo of this? What is it going to be?
Yeah.
And, we'll shoot a few different options and I'll see like what fits and what makes the right kind of scenario in this situation.
Well, going back to you talking about like the inspiration behind creating these as well, I think so much of that is, what's that first cool shot that you thought of that would entice somebody, and then the cover photo, could be something similar. So you think in video terms, and then you think in photography terms, and it's all really encompassing like what can get people to watch this and hook them right away. And that's what we're all about here, guys, on cooking with Cheat Day Eats.
So yeah, just gonna kind of skip through so we can move along. And here I am. I have the mac and cheese that's already like kind of mixed in, and I'm gonna start to fill it into each individual pan. So I use the springform pans to kind of make sure that I can pop out the mac and cheese and it looks like a cake. So once again, like I said, most of my footage here was filmed. And I mean, it's kind of cool because I have the latest version. So if I wanted to kind of like scroll through and you could see like how each individual clip, are you hearing the music?
I did. Yep. Okay. I heard that. Yep.
So I don't know. I'll stop for a second. So I'm just going to show you how I ended up using. So back to what I was saying earlier is that I actually ended up zooming in pretty much for this shot, but you're still seeing the egg fall. And then I got a wider shot, and then I got the shot, which actually is something that I filmed first, but you don't know it because I got a close up of the egg falling. So it could look like it was one of the ones that I was dropping in. So it almost feels like there is multiple angles.
Yeah.
And there's not, there's just one camera. We mostly just film with one camera angle.
I also love your facial expression in there. Like there's almost some humor to it. I don't know if you meant intentionally to have that, but like in a good way. I've like found myself laughing a little bit as you're cracking the egg, and I'm like, oh, that's maybe not intentional, but I like it.
It's not. No, I know. Sometimes I watch myself after and I'm like, why was I making that face? But it was there. I tend to do that. But so I'm gonna play this really quickly.
Cool.
So you could see that this actually, like I stated earlier, I ended up filming like a bunch of the mixing process, and in food, I feel like there's a lot of that, right? So you want to be very careful that you're not like overdoing it as far as like one process goes. When it came to those bagels, for example, there was so many interesting things happening at once, and I wanted to include it all. And I'm like, okay, well, I have to cut this down to like 30 seconds. And yes, Instagram allows you for a longer video than 30 seconds, but personally, that's what I feel like people's attention spans are on the app. And for me, like, that's what I think is going to perform the best. And nobody needs to see the same process happening over and over and over again. So
Right.
While I got a lot of it, I ended up going from here, which you could see the noodles are pretty like naked still. And then here they're covered in the mixture.
Yeah. And people definitely, they form their own reality too. Once they see it, they know that they didn't miss out on whatever that process was in the middle. And I think we as editors, you as the editor, you know what you have, but someone who's watching it for the first time doesn't know all the other footage you got. So I think if you look at it in that way, then that's a really good way for you to make a decision like, okay, this is enough to show. I don't need to show the entire process.
Right. So kind of going back and forth, like you could see here, I was filling up all the different pans. Also, same thing, like I wanted people to know that there was multiple pans. So I'm just going to scrub through really quick. And that's another thing, like back to like actually the editing process, which we haven't like touched on as much, but like I just kind of go through it pretty quickly to start. I'll make cuts, Control K, just like dump out all the stuff that I don't need. Like how much do I need of it going into the pan? Like people get the story, right?
Right.
So Control Delete, like again, I kind of stated earlier, like I can't emphasize enough, like being able to kind of think about what is your workflow and how can you make that fast, and taking this 21-minute video and cutting it down. You want to be efficient with your time. So for the most part, I'll usually like go to motion last, but if there's something like I feel like I'm not really getting the full picture and I need to move, to get the position and scale perfectly to really get an idea, should I include this clip? That's what I'll do. And, just kind of cut it. Okay, well, that's good. Move on to the next one. Now I see that, or the audience sees that we're going to fill it the top with mac and cheese. A lot of times I start filming and so for example, it's all in my hand here. So how much of it do I need? So I'll cut it to like where I see it starting to fall. So I'll do Q. Once again, you can get the information. Sometimes I color code it. This is 120. Once again, I don't think I really need 120 for like the process of the cheese falling, at least definitely not for all of it. So I'll cut, I go LL, start to speed through, cut. Sometimes I like to cut in the middle.
Best shortcut ever.
Yeah. And I just kind of like, sometimes I just skip ahead because I'm like, okay, I'm getting bored myself looking at the cheese going through. It's the same process over and over again. So I actually will get to the last one, right? So I can kind of cut. And maybe I'll just get see if there's a final shot of like all three of them.
Now, as an editor, for those that are new at editing or even, experienced editors, how, when you're deciding which part of the clip that you want to keep and which part of the clip you want to cut, you just mentioned the part of the cheese where, okay, this part of the cheese looks like good enough because it's far enough into the process of it falling. I think that's a good point to maybe hit on. How do you know when is too much to cut and then when is not enough to cut? When it drags on too much, or is this just kind of feel from you doing it for so many years? What's your process on that?
Well, I think something that I want to touch upon is the idea of a lot of videos today in the food scene is transitions. You'll see the process of seeing the actual ingredient to it already let's say cut up. And there's these fast transitions because people don't need to see necessarily the entire process happening. So instead of doing some of those transitions, my idea is I'll try to get the action that's starting it and then the final product, just kind of finishing it off. So that's just a style personality, to be honest, though. If you wanted to get a longer format video of the exact process, which is great too. If I'm watching a video and I really want to get more information, or, I'm not clear and I have never made this mac and cheese before and I have no idea how to do it. And wait, I just saw her pouring the cheese on. Now did she put it all in all, or did she only put it in two or something? So there's different ways to do it. But for me, I think like you said, most people can you could fill in the gap and realize that okay, she put cheese on top of it all. And don't forget, a lot of actually they all have a caption with it too. So there's a caption with a recipe. And of course, if you have any questions, people know, DM me, ask me any questions if you're creating the recipe at home. And if there's something that wasn't clear, I'm always happy to, kind of elaborate on the process.
Awesome. Yeah. It's kind of what's the example? The going to the refrigerator camera shot that every amateur filmmaker starts with, or the alarm clock that everyone wakes up to. And, audience, people that are watching what you're making are a lot smarter than I think some amateur video editors give them credit for. So it's deliberate choices of cutting things out that they can, fill in the blanks and figure it out on their own.
And if there was something more complex, not just top cheese onto the Mac, that I felt was really important, I would definitely emphasize it. And that could be with a slow motion shot, or just a literal shot of whatever it is happening. For example, I've been doing a lot of baking, and actually I feel like it's, there's not as much like for mac and cheese. I think it's pretty straightforward and you can mess it up and it won't matter because it's cheese. When it comes to baking, for example, I've been doing a lot of like cookie cakes, and like one element will be off, whether it be like the temperature in the house and how it made the butter a little bit softer. And those are things you won't see in a video, but they do matter, right? So like, I feel like, how do I like illustrate that? And that's something that I might just elaborate on the caption.
Right.
But, even people seeing like the video, well, does the dough look sticky? Like, is that something I want to showcase? Is it too sticky? Like, how is that going to make the end product look?
Right.
So there's a lot more that goes into it.
So much to think about. So much to think about. And really, I mean, for those that are tuning in, we're going through this process right now of Jessica creating this beautiful mac and cheese video here. And I mean, just for something for social media as short as, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, there is a lot of work that goes into this behind the scenes, which we're thrilled to have her here today to do so. We do have a really great question coming from the chat over here. Voodoo Val, thank you for being so engaged always. Where did we go here? I missed it. Okay. Great question, Val. Do you think that your experience as a school teacher lends itself to what you're doing in your new career?
Wow. Well, I think that like my eagerness to like learn, always like be learning. And I think that kind of has helped me. And actually I was a math teacher, and there's actually a lot of math when it comes to editing and camera work. So it definitely has helped. So yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
And honestly, I find myself in this place right here where I'm like teaching again, and I've done a bunch of classes with Sony as well. I actually did like a live stream with them also a few months ago. So I find myself, I'm in the teaching position again, even though I'm not teaching math, but I always joke that I'm still teaching a little bit of math because I love talking about angles, and I get really cheesy. So I'll stop.
Cheesy. There we go. Let's just see how many puns we can get.
I know.
So, I think that's 2 so far. We still have some time left. So
still have time. So yeah, I got a shot, like, for example, of me just like putting it in, and then I like ended up, kind of zooming in. And like I said earlier, I wanted to hit like the camera going in, which I think was like a tighter shot here.
Cool.
And you could see the time, the 3:50. So I'm just gonna actually go to the latest edit just so you could see how that ended up.
So crazy to see the finished edit and just how quick, those shots are. I think another thing to point out is really, when you're selecting these shots, like they're really, it's a second or half a second or 2 seconds, and they may seem really short, but when they come together as a full edit, like that's what really keeps you engaged and keeps your attention high throughout the whole video.
Yeah. And I think like one of the things I wanted to know, and it's not something that I will expect my videos to be happening every single time or within a year even, is like we just do mostly jump cuts where it's like going from one thing to the next.
Right.
I want to like transition to do more transitions and kind of incorporate a little bit more of like, fooling the eye a little bit, going from one scene to the next. But that being said, like that's kind of like the style we have right now. So before I get to that, I just wanted to hear if you can hear like the sound. Just like obviously like matching up as it like kind of hits. And this video was a pretty different from a lot of my other videos, because one, I was like in it, making it, and then also like having the element of kind of like from start to beginning of like I said, me in it. I think it's like not every single video is like that. All right, I'm going to go back to here for a second.
We have another question in the chat. Jessica, what are some of your favorite go-to tools and features in Premiere Pro that you can't live without? Ooh, I like that one. I'm trying to think of some of mine.
I don't know, is the keyboard shortcuts that I've talked about that a lot, but like I feel like that is key. And also like time remapping and just being able to really control the speed and how it plays into the story and the storytelling aspect of the food. Let's see what else. I mean, I'll be talking about tomorrow, starting to use masking a little bit more, and how like that's kind of like a little bit of a fun way to kind of spice up my videos and make them a little bit different, and also add the element of personality to them a little bit.
Yeah, all very, very critical tools. Everyone has their favorites, I'd say. I
What's
feel like
yours?
that, oh man, I don't know. I was trying to think. I mean, I think the any keyboard shortcut that I've been, relying on for the last 10 plus years, I feel like the Q, the Command K, like cutting keyboard shortcut, that I can't live without that one. And honestly, like the plus and minus of zooming in and out of my timeline, because my timelines end up getting so just like over the top that I need to continue to scale them back. A lot of the time I'm using that to see what I need to change. And then sometimes I'm just using it to procrastinate because I don't know where to go next. So there's a lot of tools in Premiere that I can't live without.
Yeah, I agree. And I think even like I said before, like I don't actually have that much on here, but I use that also. Like if you really want to zoom in and just plus and really get a better sense of, especially if you start using the time remapping, like really getting a closer idea of where your markers are, and to be able to adjust that accurately is incredibly important. So I think those tools also. And then I like for example, if I was using a shortcut here and I did W and then I did W again, it would actually bring that next clip over. So it's just like, I'll just Control Z for a second again. So it's W, W, and then I'm there.
So it's like a little ripple kind of like edit to basically, okay, very cool.
Right. Yeah. And so I've been using that all the time too, because I feel like instead of like having to go like this and do Control Z, or not Control Z, I'm sorry, Control, well now I'm going all Shift delete. There you go. Okay. There. I'm like, now I'm like, what am I saying? So then that just is just like 2 clicks and it's on the same button. So it takes me 2 seconds.
And when you're zooming in on that too, I think if you're adding music, like another point maybe that you want to touch on is, and I'll do this as well. Like I'll create markers throughout a song that I have that I'm like, okay, I want to have a clip here and hit on these for, bass drops or something. How would you go about, maybe there's a section where you want to create like 3 different markers. I think zooming in really does help you add those points and more easily match up your music, right?
Yeah. And I love like adding music and finding the beat. Like it's like such a passion of mine. Like I'm also a shuffle dancer. So
I noticed that.
Yeah. And I love music, and I always love finding that perfect song and just have the beat drop and the food's like hitting hard, So by the way, there's like little tricks in food. This is not related to the beat, but this mac and cheese was a little lopsided, but nothing a little paper towel couldn't hurt. So like I just kind of propped it up behind it. Yeah. So I kind of stacked the tower. I'm like, well, that looks sad. So how can we help it out? So, but you'll notice that what I did here was very important. Had the tripod up and running and had this on a tripod because I needed it to be consistent as I was doing the rotation and like adding it in. So once again, we could kind of skip to the latest edit and see how that turned out. So it's simple.
So cool.
I mean, it's nothing complex, but I just feel like it just like gets from point A to the end shot of all of the stacks. And it's just like kind of exciting to see it like hit like that.
I don't know if I'm assuming you're going to be touching on, like you said, masking tomorrow, but a really cool, I don't want to jump ahead of that because we want to save that for tomorrow, but a really cool masking technique there would be really like to be able to cut your hand out so that you could actually make it look like it's just rotating without a hand in it or something like that,
I like that. I usually try to spin it faster so I don't get the hand in. That's a good point. I could have done that. I like that. Yeah. And I mean, even something like, for example, if I was doing this and like something changed in the background, like I'd use the nice mask to get it out. Or if there's like a dust on the, on the table and I needed to remove it, just like a simple mask would get rid of that. And I think being able to utilize those tools in Adobe Premiere is just like key, because you don't want to have your viewer distracted by something like, a crumb. Yeah. I do try to get ahead of that. So when I'm doing a recipe video, if something falls, I have to clean it up. And like, just try to like make sure that my editing process doesn't have to go to that where I'm like, fine tuning like little things like dust or anything like that, because that'll drive me crazy, but it happens.
I do want to give you some props and just touch on the like prop set dressing as well, because you haven't really touched on that. And I think I'm surprised nobody in the chat has mentioned how beautiful that kitchen is. I will be the first person to say it, but I think you do a really great job of keeping the distractions minimal too, so that, like you said earlier, the food is really the focus and the hero. And you could just as well have shot this with, you know, a cookbook on the counter in the background or like papers everywhere, which you wouldn't because you're very good at this. But that's something to keep in mind for those that are, you know, tuning in, that when you're shooting a video like this, it is really important to make sure that you think about your set design, your props, your production design, all of that goes into the final product.
Yeah. And I think kind of what I was mentioning earlier too is like, for me, as far as like styling goes, food styling for me, it's like about the food. And so like, I like to have everything else kind of like clean and cut. So there's not really much distraction, but if you wanted to have like, you know, blocks of cheese here or like shredded cheese kind of coming from the block, like I think that would look like really cool and it could work. You just have to think about like where the placement is, and you know, that it might be nice. Actually, maybe it would break up this like horizon here and you wouldn't see that as much. Maybe you'd have those big blocks like in the background. Would it distract? You'd kind of have to see and play around with it. But like for me, I just wanted, you know, the kind of end product to like shine in this situation, but it's a style decision that you can make. So then I kind of went straight into like the cut. So when we, I like to joke around, but like once I start to get into, and I kind of had to play around with like flipping it and stuff. But like I said, we just kind of get this out, and I try to straighten in camera, but sometimes there's a little wonky. You could just easily rotate, you know, and make sure everything is aligned perfectly and play around with that.
It's another benefit to 4K. Just fix it in post a little bit.
Yeah. So you can play around with it. So I'm just going to go back to this for a second.
The other chef in the chat here, very appropriate name, says, "I'm jealous. I want a kitchen like that."
Yeah, I'm going to say that we just moved into this place and it was literally for like the kitchen and like the light coming in. It was so perfect. I walked in, I was like, yes, there's just so much light.
Oh, it looks beautiful.
Thank you. So yeah, you could play around with it, see what works. And that's what's great with editing. It's like, you don't know that I'm running around the kitchen like a crazy person. And you don't want people to feel like that. You want them to feel like, oh, wow, that was super simple. I could do this at home. And same thing with the edit. Like, I don't want people to think, I mean, I want them to be like, wow, that's a beautiful video, but I want people to go home and like, feel like, okay, well, I want to be able to create a video like that too. And honestly, like, while there's so much learning that goes on behind this, like once you get the hang of it, like it gets exciting to be able to take all this footage and create something really beautiful and share it with a community of people.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you get in a flow too. And video editors know that creative flow. I mean, any content creator, but I feel like with editing video and creating that video from start to finish, like you're doing, like you just, when you find that flow and you find that finished piece that everything just, you know, lines up and works the way you want it to, it is a really amazing feeling.
Yeah, I agree. I love it. I will, and it's fun because I feel like it's changed so much also over the years too, which is kind of cool. Like you could see like your progress, and like when you look at your old videos or photos, I'm like, ah.
I know.
But funny enough, like I'm so hooked on videos that I like almost like forget to take a photo. Like it's just secondary thought to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to take a photo. Yeah. I'm so like immersed in like the video aspect of it. And it's, I think like consumes me. Like, I'm like, okay, am I getting the shot for the video that I almost like forget that I have to take photos too?
Hey, that's a good thing though. I mean, video is the way of the future. It has been for some time. So I think you're doing the right thing. There's another question in the chat that Josh brought up. I'm really glad, or Joshua, sorry. I'm glad you brought up because I wanted to mention this earlier. Josh says that he's curious what your workflow looks like when you have 120 frames per second clips and then you use proxies for speed ramping.
So with my camera, I actually create the proxies in camera for my 4K 60. For the 4K 120, I don't create proxies, and luckily I haven't had too many issues. I'll just have to, I won't be able to rush through the content as much as I do with my 4K 60, which has a proxy. Like I would just be able to kind of zoom through it and it'll play pretty easily for me. When it comes to the 4K 120, I'll have to be a little bit more patient. Okay. In general, like, that depends on what computer you're using at home, and how that's going to really affect your playback. Luckily, we haven't had too much issue, but yeah. I think.
And can you go into just a little bit of detail of what the benefit of, sorry, I'm just adjusting my settings here as we're talking, what the benefit of using a proxy file would be as opposed to just editing the clip as it is.
Yeah, so for example, you'll notice here I have my toggle proxies on. So actually in the folder that I have all of my video clips, I have a separate folder for all my proxies, and then I'll make sure to attach them onto the video as soon as I start. And so actually the 4K 60 clips are actually proxies. So the playback is faster because it's a smaller file. So I choose to create those in camera for the Sony because it has that option, but you can actually create them in the program as well. And I could do that for the 4K 120, but I honestly haven't had too many issues. So I'm actually playing back at full too, but you can choose to play back at a lower resolution and it'll help with the playback. So if you wanted to kind of make sure that you're not lagging as much, which you'll notice here it's like yellow, but I haven't had too many issues. You could let me know if you see any.
No, it's actually been, I'm surprised at how well it's playing back. But
yeah, so yeah, I would say like definitely invest in learning a little bit more about proxies because it really helps your workflow, and you don't want to be sitting there like torturing yourself trying to get a 4K 120. So like as much as I love it, like if your computer can't handle it, like you don't want to put that yourself through that, because I've done it before with like a laptop. Now I'm on a desktop and it's such a world of a difference. But definitely learn more about it because it's a tool to help your video editing speed up and workflow.
Sachneet, I hope I am saying that right. Someone in the chat is wondering what your sequence settings are for the Instagram video, which we discussed earlier, but maybe you can just bring those up. And just for anyone that is joining the chat and that's new to this, maybe rather than pulling a custom setting, you can just show us really quickly how you can actually create that preset and then just save it as an Instagram preset.
Right. So for example, I would do Control N, and that would like bring up the sequence settings. And if I wanted to create a new one, you could go to the settings tab, and then I just leave it at custom. I do for Instagram, it's 30 frames per second. I have 29.97. Sometimes there's some tech things that I've learned along the way from watching other people's videos that I trust. And that's kind of what I've gone through. And then probably the most important thing here, right, obviously, is the aspect ratio. We're talking about Instagram. So that's a 4:5. That's a 1080 by 1350 aspect ratio.
Perfect.
Once again, a lot of these are default and I just go with it. And based off of other people's that I've watched, same thing. This is something that I have heard that was the best settings to use. So I learned from like other people who are kind of video editors as well and professionals in that sense. And then you can save your preset here and name it. So I would do 1080 by 1350, or you could just name it Instagram. You could put a description. I usually don't. For me, this is just for me. If I was like tagging on like my partner who is going to be working on it too, like maybe I would have more detail as far as the description or anything else. But since it's just for me, I save it and then it's going to actually load. And this is super useful. I think one of the biggest things that are time savers when it comes to Premiere Pro is learning the keyboard shortcuts, thinking about presets and like what you can do to like some of the processes that you go over and over again. Like you don't want to keep doing that. Like whatever can kind of cut your time as far as the things that you do every single time, you want to try to think there's a preset for that. Yep. Even a keyboard shortcut, like you can go ahead and create a custom keyboard shortcut too. So like if there's something that you find you're doing and you don't want to use Q, W, and J, L, K, like whatever, you can change those to be whatever you find your fingers are using, you know?
Can you show us that real quick? It's a great feature in Premiere that I know maybe a lot of people don't actually know about, that you can change those shortcuts. So some people have longer fingers. They need to reach around the keyboard.
Now I'm forgetting what the keyboard shortcut tab is.
I think it's up in, you're on a Windows. I think it's preferences.
But there's a keyboard shortcut for the keyboard shortcut.
Wow, we're getting meta here. Keyboard shortcut for the keyboard shortcut. It's probably in there somewhere.
It's something with a K. It's I'll try it. Well, let me just try it. I just cut my video, but let me see. No. Oh, there we go.
There we
It's
go.
Control Alt K.
There we go.
For those of you watching, if you want the keyboard shortcut for the keyboard shortcuts, it's Control Shift A or Control Alt A. Control Alt A. All right, so here you have them, and it'll showcase. And there's a way to, I think, shift and show the other ones too when you have like a shift too.
Yeah, I think so. Cool. Well, so yeah, for anybody that is wanting to create their own shortcuts, another powerful feature in Premiere. Thank you Premiere for having this feature in here, because it does save people a lot of time. It saves me a lot of time. And I actually had gone from Final Cut to Premiere years ago, and I remember starting in Premiere on like the Final Cut keyboard shortcuts, because it was the same shortcuts that I was using in Final Cut. And I think they still have it. Yeah. Final Cut Pro 7.0. So people that have moved over.
If you're on a different, platform, you could come here because they have that little hack too. So I think that's really great, because, I do meet a lot of people who ask me like where I edit. And so, I think a lot of people are hesitant to make the switch, but that just makes it easier. Yeah. I think the keyboard shortcuts are really cool.
So I just want to let you know, we have about 20 minutes left on the stream. So I just want to let you continue your process, and I will continue to feed some questions if we have them on the chat. To those who have been engaged, thank you so much. It's been a really awesome chat. And
thank you guys.
We'll
I'd
keep
love
it rolling.
to know, if you guys are doing, what kind of like videos are you creating? So I'm definitely interested in hearing, is it food? Is it restaurants? Or I guess restaurants is food, but travel. So yeah, we were creating a lot of content that was travel focused. And then we started to restructure our content to be more recipes. And now it's like something I'm super passionate about, that it's like almost like hard for us to go travel, because I feel like I need to do a recipe video. Yeah. So it's kind of weird how things shift.
Well, food plays such a huge part in travel as well. So I think the recipe section is probably a little bit different than if you're traveling and doing maybe more restaurant or food focused content. But stuff like this, obviously, now that you have this beautiful kitchen, I'd be hard pressed not to want to create videos like this in that space.
So I just wanted to showcase that, like, for example, end shots could be close up. For me, like, it was fun to kind of like think about, okay, well, zooming in on the food and then kind of widening the shot with me in it. I'm just going to cut that. Okay, I'm talking, blah, blah, blah. Once again, kind of like directing my partner of like the action shot to get. That was a little blurry, so maybe I won't use that. So I'm going to cut it. Shift delete just to get rid of the rest of that clip, bring it up. So, I always think, for me, this is just like a personal thing. You'll notice that I was standing up for this, and this is kind of a creative thing. I like to be closer to the food, so that my shot for my cover photo has like something that's more similar to what I have here. So I'm going to scale it in, position it. And for me, this is a little bit more eye-catching. So if I wanted to just going to bring this back a little bit. And use the razor tool here too. But so just gonna show you an idea. So like here, I feel like there's just like a lot of dead space to me. So like when I come into that closer up shot, like it's just, for me, it kind of pops a little bit more.
And you see a lot more of that compression just even in that shot, the separation between you and the background. So I think the foreground really does stand out in that shot.
And another keyboard shortcut that you can use to help your workflow, like, so for example, if I was showing you this shot and then I wanted to kind of scroll through, I'm just pressing the down arrow to get from like clip to clip. And that's something I might do as I'm like editing, like, okay, well, like what clips do I actually have after this? Once again, I could kind of pull in, but I might not be seeing that. So kind of helps me just like work through it. And then I like to like finish and like my video, especially if I was doing a TikTok of me trying it. It was amazing.
I like how you're eating it. Like I would have thought it was like cornbread or something. You're like eating it like this like pie. It's so funny.
To be honest, I mean, and people are gonna be like, they do comment like, why are you eating it with your hands? But it was like almost like a mac and cheese hand pie.
Yeah, it's perfect.
So like this consistency is like a mac and cheese that I've made multiple times. It's a baked one, and since it has eggs, it kind of acts as like a binder. So therefore it forms like almost like a patty.
Yeah, it looks that way. And I mean,
Yeah.
plus I don't know, just like it makes people stop and think like, what am I watching right now? What am I looking at? This, oh my God, it's a tower of mac and cheese. Yes, please. Like, let me stop everything I'm doing and watch this video.
So like I called it a cake, and I think people love that because I think like if I have seen like a bunch of like wedding cakes that are like made of cheese now, like people who are like more savory. And like,
That's
I think
cool.
like people are like, oh my God, I like a cake made with like mac and cheese. I also think there's like a lot of like visual aspects to this. Like, for example, like I might zoom in here because having that cross section and being able to see like the cut of like the noodles is like really cool. So once again, I film in 4K 60 or 4K 120. Therefore, right now I'm at 100, but look how much room I have to move around, and I can move around, see like what is that specific shot that would make the most sense for this specific part of the story.
Right.
And once again, you could kind of change the speed, but in this case, I might like leave it on here for like a second, really to help people, or maybe I'll like just have it like zoom in slightly by creating keyframes and like starting off here. Once again, I like to try to make sure that when I'm doing my keyframes, I want the motion usually to start at the beginning, kind of end at the end, and make it like nice and natural. So I like to utilize
ease out.
Yeah. I always thought that was weird. So like you want to ease out of the motion and ease like into it, right? So that,
it's a little counterintuitive, but it does work. It does what it's supposed to.
Yes. So you want it to ease in slowly, ease out slowly and ease into it. Yeah. That wasn't the best description, but so I'm going to go back to the latest edit just so. Actually, do you want to play the final, or do we still have a little bit of time? So
yeah, we have about, I'm thinking maybe 10 minutes, 12 minutes. I'm probably making that up. I can't do math right now, but we got about 10 minutes. So we have some time.
So I think the biggest part of like my editing process is finding those key moments to like really focus on as far as the video goes. Like I said, like this was like one of those like main eye catchers. And I know that sounds weird because like the whole video is important, but I feel like there's certain points that I think are going to catch the eye more than anything else. And like finding what those are and like highlighting it through your video editing is key to creating that final product. So for me, once again, I said like having the cheeses hit. And so I'm just going to actually click on here, and you could see I did a little rotation. I'm at 63%. So I still had some room, but it was like almost because of how I only had 2 shots to work with once the cheese hit, I had to really kind of line them up. And so what actually, I didn't show this before, but what you could do too, I'm just gonna like lift this up for a second and show, like you could kind of line up the 2 clips that you want to match and just bring down the opacity a little bit and make sure like the cheeses are kind of like lining up a little bit. Like that's a little bit of a hack, or you can actually bring this back up to 100% and just use the eye to kind of see where you are. I'm a little off as far as like where the videos are starting and ending, but so those are different like little tricks that I'll do if I'm trying to do some specific transition where I want it to feel super natural and like, you know, seamless. So yeah, I could utilize that. I'm just gonna Control Z here.
That's a great point too. I think, you know, just you have a lot of really cool match cuts, and the fact that that's the first match cut you have seems so important and seamless, but you know, finding that horizon line or finding that action that it matches on is really easy to do. It's just sometimes people don't really understand how to actually do it. So
yeah, so I think it had to do with a little bit of so I'm just gonna zoom in here so we could see a little bit more too. I started off with like me just like kind of shaking, and then I kind of cut it because I knew that I was going to start the motion there. This was happening. Just gonna get in even closer. No, why it won't let me. So I think I have this. She's not. So once again, I actually didn't do a speed ramp here. I just had it at 100, and I wanted to actually slow down this motion. So this was happening fast because I wanted to kind of trick the eye, where it was just like, okay, well, either I was going to do a speed ramp or I wanted this to happen fast, because you don't want it to linger too long since it is a transition and it was not perfect. So it was like, how do I trick the eye to make that like happen? And I think that like speeding up, like, and like having that go fast, or actually at a regular pace even, was still like for the eye, like it happened so quickly that you didn't notice the transition. It just seamlessly happens.
Now, I guess on this specific edit, I know you have music in here, and I don't want to run out of time before we go over that. We may run out of a little bit of time, but just from a music standpoint, I mean, you've edited this whole video without relying on music. So then how do you then go back and will you now source a track that you feel fits the vibe that you've already created?
So, I actually probably had the music in before we did. So because I'm working backwards, I didn't showcase it as much. So I will mention that probably once I cut down the clips for the most part and probably narrowed it down from like 21 minutes to like maybe 4, that's when I'll bring in the music and really fine tune it. And I specifically knew, I think this song has like almost like a game day aspect to it. So I'm just going to play the first few seconds.
Sure.
It sounds like, I don't know, football to me.
It does. It's like NFL Sunday, like let's get your mac and cheese ready to go. And
exactly.
It does.
So like I found the song, was like, this is perfect. I needed to have like that one beat hit at the second that the cheeses were hitting. So I probably brought this in like pretty close to like where everything was cut, but not final. And gotcha. I think that that's where I usually do. And sometimes I need a song. Like, I feel like I need a song to help me edit this, because like, I do find that I have like all these beautiful clips and I want to include it. And it's like still like 2 minutes. And that doesn't seem like a lot especially if you're filming for YouTube, but for Instagram, like 2 minutes, like I need 30 seconds. And it's sometimes challenging to have to cut out things. So music sometimes is like that thing that actually helps me like, okay, well, there's a beat. I need to make a cut. Like something's leaving and it's you. Bye.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of what I do.
It creates it does create the overall feel and the mood right off the bat if you're listening to it. And I feel the same way. I feel like sometimes music can hinder me from moving on because I can't find the right song or I can't find the right sound. But I'll start a lot of projects with a specific track that I have in mind that I'm like, oh my God, I need to create a sequence to this music. And then I'll, work from there. So it is really interesting. And someone in the chat had actually asked if you edit the clips to the music or edit the clip and then add the music. And it seems like it could really go both ways.
Yeah, I think it can. And like I said, sometimes like I'll be searching through Epidemic Sound for like a specific song for one video. And I find like the song that just like I'm vibing with. And I'm like, I have to save this. Like, I know I'm going to use it at a later time and I have no idea with what. And like, I don't even have a vision in mind, but it's like one of those songs that just like catches my ear, I guess. So like, I'm like, I have to use this and then I'll use it at another time.
Awesome. I've actually been in places where my wife will hear a song like playing somewhere and she's like, haven't you used that somewhere in a video? And she's like, I've like showed it to her like millions of times. She's like, I hated that song after you used it for a while. So it could definitely be overplayed.
Yeah, for sure. And I hear like, when I'm watching like a YouTube or something, I'm like, I know that one.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so I found this song and I think I put it in pretty early on in the editing process. And then once I actually got the song, it was easy because the jump cuts work with like the beats. And obviously there's certain things like along the way, like I was mentioning before, where like I need to have a beat hit now and it might not work as the other parts of the song. So it's like constantly trying to like shuffle and finding that perfect balance, because you're not always going to get it to be like perfect in every single clip. Right. But making sure that those like specific moments that you want to highlight are in line with the beat, I think that is key. And I think the beginning of the song or the beginning of the video is probably the most important. So like having like that beat hit then was key to me, and like figuring out everything else after that was, all right, I'll figure it out, because as long as that hits then, like I'll make everything else work.
Very cool.
And that was specific to this video. I mean, not every video is going to be like that.
Yeah, and sometimes you do get lucky. I mean, it's not that you got lucky in this sense, but I feel that in searching for the right song, sometimes you don't realize that song fits with the video you've created. And then you hear one part of that beat and you're like, oh, it's just too good. I need to use this in some way. So it is another part of the creative process, just finding music, finding a feeling to your video and knowing what that is from maybe the beginning, so that you have, you're guiding in that way.
Yeah. And I think also on that note, when it comes to like the editing process, we didn't really touch upon it that much, but one of the things you'll notice is like I use warp stabilization. So sometimes not everything is like perfectly done, and you kind of had to fine tune it. I like to use like position, scale, and rotation. And it doesn't always have to be 50%. You could play around and like see what kind of makes the video the smoothest. And I think it's important that you utilize some of those things, because not everyone's gonna be like handheld and smooth, but you might want to be able to get that specific shot. And there's so many features in Premiere that you have that can like allow your video to like be even better. So, so if you shot something and you're like, I really want to include that, it's a little shaky, what can I do? There's tools that you can use, and they're actually pretty simple. Sometimes, you just throw it on and it worked out pretty well. And it wasn't like that shaky, but like just even smoothing it out a little bit, it like made me feel a little better, because you don't want someone watching like this video kind of moving around too much, because then it's a distraction, and you don't ever want someone to like stop in the middle of a video like, oh, what was that? Which actually, if you do warp stabilization sometimes too much, like you can see that little like jello weird effect, right? You're like, whoa, what happened? So don't think that you could just, sometimes it works where you could just throw it on and it's perfect. And then other times you need to, finagle it a little bit. So
yeah, it is a great tool, and definitely something you can rely heavily on in a pinch if you don't have a tripod, or if you don't, everyone is really obsessed with using gimbals, and I'm a proponent of that as well, but sometimes it hinders the workflow because you can't get the shot you want quick enough. So handheld shot at 4K 120 or 4K 60 with a little bit of warp stabilization. And to do that here, it looks like Jessica nested the clip and then just added the warp stabilizer to that clip.
Yeah. So. And I think the reason for me is it doesn't seem like everyone has to, but because my sequence is different than the setting, you actually have to nest it, because if I try to throw on a warp stabilization here, you'll see what I get. I get a notification.
Wasn't that a great error? Kind of love that.
Yeah, so that's just a little hack actually, because I tried to put on a warp stabilization when I first, learned about it. I was like, oh, I can, smooth out this clip a little bit. If you get that, you just have to nest it first, and that seems to be the hack around that.
Yeah, and there's a method of, if you want to change the speed, you have to change the speed of the clip first and then nest it, and then you can add warp stabilization, or else like speed and warp stabilization for some reason can't be used in tandem. So there's like a weird order, little hack.
Order of operations. So there's my math thing. There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Order of operations. See?
It comes around.
Yeah. And also when it comes to color editing, I like to keep it natural. I think my videos tend to be a little bit saturated. Like that's just like the look I like. I would say like, for me, I think like I want the yellow to kind of pop. So I would say like natural with a little bit of like a little pop. And when it comes to lighting, like if I was shooting this in my kitchen, which I was, maybe, there was like the sun coming in a little bit from one angle more than the other. If I wanted to balance that out, I might add another adjustment layer and just here I'm masking. And actually you could see that I specifically highlighted over the mac and cheese to really kind of brighten that. To obviously when you're talking about photos, it's so easy to do that, right? You can use a brush, the healing tool. With video, it's a little bit more challenging, because how are you going to highlight that specific thing? Otherwise you're going to highlight the whole entire clip. So I'm very specific that I knew I wanted to kind of like bring this up a little bit as far as the color and the brightness. So I was able to do that, and you could see how they each changed.
I definitely would like to continue going into masking a little bit more tomorrow. I know we're coming up on 1 or 2 minutes left here. So if there's anything else that you want to maybe go over, I think we're going to probably have to carry in the rest of this to tomorrow. But any last questions in the chat? Anything else from you, Jessica, today?
I would say let's just play the video so we can see.
Let's do it. So good. So good. Oh, that's awesome. I love it.
Thank you. It's fun. It's playful. Like that's just kind of my personality and like what fits like my brand. So it's fun.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it certainly came through on the stream today, and I hope you had as much fun as I did watching you create this wonderful recipe and this wonderful video. And I know everyone, thank you for those that were in the chat today, and for those that tuned in. Thank you so much. For those that missed today, there will be a replay on YouTube, but tune in tomorrow again at noon Pacific time. We will be back. We will be here at 3 o'clock Eastern time on behance.net/live. And thank you so much, Jessica. Thank you to those who have tuned in on the stream. And we'll see you guys tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.